Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Always, every time. Did
I
you hold
can't.
on
I
before?
can't throw in a reference to the room. What
Did
are
you
we here
see
for?
Ilias's tweet when March rolled around? He's like, "Oh, hi, March," and I hate how quickly I retweeted it. Like I'm very judgmental about my retweets. That one, smashed it.
You gotta smash the retweets if you're shouting out Tommy Wiseau. All right. Actually, I don't know if people remember this because it was a long time ago. But back when you and I were at Habs Eyes and the Prize, we did this thing with Larry Ribbensoin. And a friend of mine, James David, was kind of the genius behind it all. He wrote a few of the columns about Larry Ribbensoin and his son Sprague, who hated Larry so much. Larry only ever passed; he never shot. So he was like a career leader in assists, a fake player, and his son only shot, never passed. So he he played in the Liga Super Happy Fun Ball over in
I think
Switzerland.
I got into a beef with Sprague at one point, me and him, but we don't talk about it. It's just something happened a long time ago, and everyone voted him number one. I had him number 40 because Sprague, you know what you did.
40 out of 36.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and back in the day, James actually made a hockey card for Larry Ribbensoin, and for the face, he took Tommy Wiseau.
Oh, is that? Yeah, it is. It is now that I think about it.
Yeah, so I still have that card somewhere, and it's signed by Tommy Wiseau.
What?
Because he went to like a screening, and Tommy Wiseau was there, and he got him to sign the card, and
this
he had
is
no idea what the hell's going
This
on.
is meta within meta before the meta was meta. Wow.
I know, right?
That's Abed on community levels of beta. Shout out to everyone in the chat.
Of course. Welcome. KIC is here. Black Dragon, Dragon Noir, Ellen
Dragon
Keefe,
Noir.
David W,
Claire's always here.
Trinket83. I saw
Claire is
Trizak
always
was here. Claire is here.
Trizak too. Yeah.
Vincent Tardif is here. So always fun to chat with you guys. It's been a long time for me. I've been gone for 2 weeks now. So, but before we get into the show, obviously we got lots to talk about tonight because, I missed the trade deadline. I missed the Gurionov acquisition. There's lots to talk about with that. This game obviously went from boring to entertaining pretty quick in the third period. But before we do that, we've got to tell you about our sponsor. You want to bet? Then get in on the action at Sports Interaction. The boys of summer are back on the diamond and March Madness is on deck. Bet pregame, live in play, or on one of our many prop bets. Sports Interaction makes it easy to deposit, play, and cash out. Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN, or in Ontario, download the app using the QR code at the bottom of the screen. 19 plus, please play responsibly. All right, so with that out of the way, I know there've been comments that I've seen recently, like, oh, only in Ontario for the app, but this is a Montreal show. Listen, there's lots of expats in Ontario. There's lots of us there, so don't worry too much.
And some of us came to Quebec from Ontario to kind of even it out. So
this is true.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is true. Or some of us came from Alberta, as I did.
Well, which is always funny when we're sitting it's happened before. Me and Andrew are sitting at a bar with, let's say, like Laura, and like people be like, "Who's from Montreal?" And they assume I am Marc Dumont. I'm the one that's been here the least amount of times. Laura is the OG, and me and Andrew we're both dirty Anglophones that come from, Ottawa, that dirty Ottawa, and you look at you, it's Fort McMurray. Yeesh.
Yeah, I know, right? And it's actually it's been almost 18 years since I moved to Montreal now, which means
you're more of a Quebecer than an Albertan.
Yeah, it'll be half my life that I've lived in Quebec, which is pretty fun. And I was reminded by my mom this week, past Friday, because I was like 18 years, I'm thinking about like timelines, right? When I was in grade 10, my dad had cancer. So this Friday that just passed was my dad's 20 years cancer-free.
Oh, now
that's
an anniversary.
So cool.
That is
right?
Very
so
cool.
I'm
Absolutely.
Just shouting him out here. I don't know if he's going to watch. I don't know if he watches it all, but
we'll see.
I
But
just
we
wanted
do
to
have
shout out
someone
my dad
from Ottawa watching right now, and is Dennis Imisaku from our good friend on Twitter. And also Ellen is watching from St. John's. We got people all over the world right now. That's the cool part. And Matthew Gregory, I don't know if I recognize your name, but welcome aboard.
Absolutely.
Tonight.
And I shout out to JN, says that I look very different. Sharp bud. Thanks. I buzzed off the beard after I got my wisdom tooth and the cyst in my jaw out just to see how much swelling there was.
Yeah.
And see if I got any bruising, but never really swole up, never really got any bruising, and then
Yeah.
I got a haircut because it was out of control.
We
So
had to force Andrew to not come back on the show because
yeah,
he's a
this is
workaholic.
true.
Also, Andrew, if I was running casting for, let's say, like Sons of Anarchy, I would cast you as like a mid-level thug right now. If you just put some chains on and maybe like on a
Here,
bike.
I'll hide that.
Yeah, yeah, okay, all right. So no, actually, you're no longer good for the part. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, there you go. But you know what? I do have a cool shirt on. I don't know if anybody watches What We Do in the Shadows, but
Best show on Manhattan.
this is how we talk in Tucson, Arizona. Anyway, we're going off on a few tangents here to start, but it's been 2 weeks. I'm out of practice. What do you expect? All right. Kay is upset that I had no swelling. Yeah, I'm just indestructible, apparently, except for my ankles, which are brittle as possible. So the whole game, I'm looking at Mike Matheson and thinking, man, if I could skate like that, I'd never take the skates off.
What a player. But you know what? You get to a point in your life where you have one bad ankle injury. And like I was thinking last night as I was going to bed, remember when I screwed up my ankle last year when I went solo camping? It's still all messed up and it's been about a calendar year. So eventually your body just stops recuperating. And that's that. You've hit that point, my friend.
Well, I messed up my ankle when I was like 19.
Yeah.
And
game over, man.
Never been the same. Then because of compensating for that one, I messed up the other one. So
yeah, well, there you go. Then you're even. Shout out to Chuck Smith, who's in Ontario but from Newfoundland. Well, where in Newfoundland? That's the important part. We got to know.
For sure, we love the Newfoundlanders. My family is on my dad's side originally from Newfoundland.
Really?
The Hancocks from Gander and the Berkshires from Clarenville, St. John's area. They're all around, but yeah, we're kind of from all over Canada.
Well, and also you're going to have a lot of people from out east that end up in Fort McMurray, whether everyone from New Brunswick ends up working in Fort McMurray. Every single person
this is true.
that I've ever met from New Brunswick ends up in Fort McMurray. So it's one big happy family in Canada, right?
Absolutely. Although not really. Everybody hates each other.
Exactly.
Well, in one big happy family in here at least. All right, let's talk about this this Habs team. I do want to talk about the game, but I want to just recap a little bit on the trade deadline because you guys did the trade deadline show, and man, what a fantastic job you did. Everyone from top to bottom, it was really incredible.
Good.
I got to watch a little bit. For those who didn't see, I posted a video. I was making dinner while it was going on, and my youngest Miles was helping me. And Mark was on a segment, and he goes, "It's Mark! It's Mark!" He was like so excited to see Mark on the show.
That stuff melts me inside. Like I'm always like, no, I don't need kids in my life. I'm really happy doing because when I want to leave my house, what do? I put my shoes on and I leave my house. Okay, I know that's something that you can't do, but stuff like that, I'm like, oh, it really gets me right here. So shout out to Miles and Dylan.
Yeah, they have. I mean, Dylan's on March break now, so he's going to have a lot of fun this week. But I do want to just talk about the trade deadline a little bit because I feel like part of what's fun about this show is we get into the fun times for sure, and you get hyped up, but we also get to play the peacemaker in the stress out, right? And I feel like Habs fandom is so anxious right now because they've seen coming off of the All-Star break, the Canadiens went on this little win streak, and everyone was a little bit upset about it because they're pushing themselves out of the Bedard sweepstakes, and they're paranoid about Florida, who's been a lot better the last couple months, maybe pushing that pick out of the sweepstakes as well. And then the trade deadline comes, they really only sell Dadonov, so people are freaking out about that. And I gotta say, my overall opinion, I don't know how you are, Mark, because I wasn't able to watch everything while I was out because, the late games, all that, and then weekends with the kids. But I think people need to relax a little bit. I don't want to tell people how to feel, but the Canadiens are going to be okay. There's still a slim chance at Bedard, but I think what we have to remember is there's just no chance they were going to out-tank teams like Chicago or Anaheim.
Or even Columbus, who's actually the worst team in the NHL right now, which is funny because we only talk about Chicago, and Anaheim did everything possible to have the best odds at first overall, and they had injury luck kind of like the Habs, and yet they still are not bad enough. I don't know why I was going to use turd as a verb there, but they still aren't bad enough as Chicago and Columbus. So it was not realistic whatsoever for the Canadiens to reach that point. No.
Yeah, and the fact is, you're tanking for a percent chance, right? Yeah. It's not actually tanking for the number one pick.
There are no guarantees. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and look at the New Jersey Devils last year. They were nowhere close to like getting second overall, right?
Mhm,
They got second overall. Things like that
Colorado.
can happen.
Colorado, they thought it was going to
Yep.
be amazing. First overall pick, they had to drop the fourth. You know how heartbreaking that is until you pick a guy like Cale Makar, and that's the point here. Even if they don't get the first overall, it's no excuse. You go out, and you get a good player, and that's going to be a huge boon to the franchise.
Yeah. Now I do. The one thing that I will say about the draft that is a little bit concerning is there seems to be a lot of talk about the Canadiens, if they were to have like Matvei Michkov fall to them at 7, of passing on him.
I heard that too.
I don't get it. if they if you were to pass on him at like 3 and take Carlson, I can kind of square that circle.
Yeah.
But at 7, I feel like that would be a big indictment of Hughes and Co. and the brain trust in drafting. That's a little bit, but we're not there, right? We don't know yet.
No, but I did hear this as well from a couple sources. I don't, given my history of the team, I'm not going to go put that out there. But what I read online is the same stuff that I had heard. And to me, there's one common theme here, and we're talking about Dvorsky and Reinbacher. There seems to be in Nick Bobrov's history, and I don't want to necessarily rehash this as we did today, but a lot of misses on high-end European players. And we're not saying Juraj Slafkovsky is a miss, but what they did there is they kind of fell into the recency bias, that the trap that a lot of teams did. And it's almost to the point that when Nick Bobrov is involved, if you auto-picked for points, you would have ended up with much better players. So to me, the key for the Canadiens, don't galaxy brain this. Go with who you think is the best. And I know you're really pumped about development, but raw talent is important as well.
Yeah, it 100% is. And, as much as, I've seen a bunch of people freaking out about, now I'm blanking on his name, but the guy that TSN had them picking.
Barlow?
Yeah, Colby Barlow, I think.
Yeah,
who's good player. A great goal scorer, but maybe not the
goals.
Complete package kind of player. But here's what I would caution in terms of, like, obviously everybody wants Connor Bedard. If you can't get Bedard, you want Adam Fantilli. But the best team in the league right now has no top 5 picks on it. I don't think Charlie Mack.
Boston?
I think he's like lower end of the draft. Yeah, Boston. Like.
Taylor Hall.
Yeah, okay, Taylor Hall. Yeah, but he's not a big Taylor Hall's a second liner. No, but right?
That was such a Twitter answer because I knew exactly what you meant.
But what I'm saying is, like, that team's not built around top end picks, right? They got lucky for sure. Pasternak's like 25th.
26th.
Yeah. One spot before the Canadiens took Nikita Scherbak.
25th. I remember that quite clearly because I was in charge of the EOTP draft, and Pasternak was there at 26 or 25, and that's who I took. But I just don't think it's a valid excuse. And let's not forget, they got the number 1 overall last year, right? Like this idea that you need a number 1 overall in back-to-back years, of course it's a boon, but it's also a little greedy. You know what I mean? Like, if we were other teams, we'd be looking at the Habs right now with a bit of a okay there. Like, it's a little embarrassing. So
at the same time, I'm like, when's the last time the Canadiens had a full-on franchise forward? It's about time. There's part of me that just believes it's destined anyway, because like you saw the Leafs get it, and you're like, come on, let's even it out here. Yeah. But wouldn't that be fun probably for the NHL? Not. It would be great. And as much as people are like, oh, it'd be great if he was in Arizona, grow the game. Listen. The NHL is so focused on growing the game. You know what actually grows the game? The best franchises in the sport being great.
And I've always maintained that for the Leafs. And I know this is not the place to say it, but when the Leafs are good, the NHL makes a lot more money. It's better for every single team in the NHL. But hey, listen, there's also Leo Carlson here that we're like, there's also Zach Benson. There's also Will Smith. There's also Mathieu Savoie. Like, I would avoid Dvorsky and Reinbacher, honestly, and I don't know how Nick Bobrov feels about that, but there's a lot of talent. And if Michkov is available, personally, I have him 2 right now in terms of talent. Anywhere from 1 to 10, you don't pick him. I feel like you just said there, it's been so long since there's been a game-breaking presence, and he has that potential. You'd be stupid to avoid it. Let's be perfectly honest. Don't galaxy brain it. Go for the guy with the high rating.
Yeah, it would very much be like a bit of a black mark on what they've done so far. But again, we're not
Hey,
there
but
yet.
then
We
there's
don't need to
guys like
freak
Lane
out.
Hudson who just set, as Ellen Keefe mentioned earlier in the chat, just said, the record for most points in the last 30 years by an under 19 defenseman, seventh in the NCAA for points per game. He led all defensemen in scoring. I mean, I don't want to get too excited. And yeah, the guy weighs 30 pounds with nails in his pocket, soaking wet. But man, like the Canadians have never had a prospect like Lane Hudson in their system. Never, not even close. Not Subban, not anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that his closest comparable right now in terms of historical NCAA production is
Hughes.
Brian Leach.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
But
jeez.
Brian Leach played in the NCAA when like the janitor was in net, and like there weren't. It wasn't necessarily. I don't think there were boards. I'm not sure there were refs. Like that era. Pas dans celle dans poubelle, but you're right. He came close to matching like a silly puck era, which is
Yeah.
And Brian Leach, for those that don't remember, il était bon. Il était très bon, Brian Leach.
He was unbelievably great. One of those guys that, like Bray Bork, even when he's acquired at the trade deadline by a team in his 40s, basically, he's still basically elite. Like, he was that good. Not saying that Hudson's going to be that good, but man, he has everything you want except for size, right?
And he improved his defensive game. There were two things. There was his gap control was a little off because he was so wily, like he was whipping around the ice. And that's something that Adam Douglas specifically worked with him at Dev Camp. So when they scouted him, they already knew what they had to work with, which I love. And because of that, his defensive positioning was a little sketchy as well. And he's improved both of those leaps and bounds. And so has his decision making in the offensive zone. So like, it's not just a raw talent thing. He's already improved from the draft.
Yeah, and that's great to see. But okay, so on to the trade deadline a little bit, and then we'll talk about this game a little bit. I know people were freaking out because they wanted to see like Edmondson traded, they wanted to see Monahan traded. Dodonov got traded for Gurionov, which I think is great asset management, frankly. Even if Gurionov doesn't break out in any way, he looks all right so far, I think. Had a bit of a tougher night tonight, but when you can trade a guy that you got for trading away a dead contract for a 25-year-old player who scored 20 goals, it's worth a shot. But the whole Monahan situation, I don't know about how you feel, Mark, but as soon as that memo went around that the league was going to be looking closely at acquiring contracts that the player's injured and won't play again until the playoffs, Monahan was never going to be traded. There's no chance because the league is purposely trying to stop that, and also his value gets completely destroyed.
It's, to me, I felt like it was they're almost showing proof of life for guys like Edmondson and Monahan, like, oh, Monahan's at practice, like he's not taking any hits, but look at him. So it almost got to the point that they were trying too hard. I will say this. Yeah. I don't know if you can blame, okay, here's the timeline. On December, I believe 1st, you play the Flames. It makes sense to let him play there, even though he came in with a boot, right? Like, fair play.
He wanted to play that game. That's kind of the player pushing the envelope, right?
And if you don't play him, that looks bad for, like, you go into Vancouver territory. You know what I mean? Yeah. For like being shitty towards players. The next game he played against Edmonton. Now that's questionable. And then the game that he played against Seattle, that's 5 days later. You have enough time between there to figure it out.
Vancouver?
Vancouver, Seattle. Yeah, he left against Seattle. Or no, was it either? Anyway.
He left in the Vancouver game because then they started falling apart.
Oh, yeah, because it was first period, he had scored a goal. But it comes down to the player and the doctors. If they say he's good to go, if Kent Hughes interferes there, he's essentially saying, I know better than doctors. Kent Hughes doesn't have a degree. He can't make that call. Now, I think what it does do is that it should trigger a review of their entire training, medical, everything that has to do with injuries, because you're up to 7,000 man games lost in 2 games in 2 years. But you can't undermine doctors. You just can't. Like, we can now, we're saying retrospect, but at the time, well, like, it's like going to your mechanic and you know nothing, and you're like, no, it's definitely, my alternator. When he's like, no, your belt broke. Like, what are you talking about? So I get the criticism, but I just don't know if you can blame Kent Hughes for the Monahan situation.
Yeah, I think the fact is you have to realize, like, they already got a first-round pick for Monahan to take him on. And anything on top of that was going to be a bonus. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, but they already won that trade. As far as, like, Edmondson is concerned, my read of the situation, I know people were flipping out because Kent Hughes said in the, like, post-deadline conference, he was like, oh, he's a leader. We wanted to keep him around our young players. to me, that's not him saying like we would never trade Joel Edmondson because he's a leader and we wanted to keep him. That's him saying the offers for Joel Edmondson, considering his injury history, were not good enough. So we have another year on his contract. We'll try next year.
Fair enough. I'm just thinking, when's the last time you heard about a defenseman and he'll be 30 with chronic back issues that miraculously got rid of his chronic back issues and somehow, like, again, it's a medical thing, so I am talking out of my ass a little here, but very unlikely. Just like take the back injury out of it. It's unlikely that a guy like Edmondson at 30 will suddenly get better. But if you add the chronic back issue, there's a reason it's called chronic. It's because it doesn't go away. So I know that, but in my opinion, even if the deal was a 5th round pick, boom, it's gone. There's plenty of leaders on the team. That ice time goes to younger players and spare salary cap, so you can go get more contracts next year and get more Monahan style picks. Does that make sense?
What might benefit them with Edmondson next year is guys like Barron, Gooley, Harris will be taking more ice time away from him. So he'll be put in a more cushy situation.
That could be, yeah.
And then maybe he'll look a little bit better. Although I think he's looked better both since he came back and before he went down to injury again. Like, I feel like his play improved when they called up Justin Barron the first time. And it took like a couple weeks, but they kind of became simpatico and he became that guy that you kind of can trust with the puck a little bit more. There's still something there.
I wouldn't play him with a young player. He looks good actually, besides Savard or with Matheson. His numbers are actually pretty decent. With Gooley and etc. No, like that's bad development. In that case, he's hurting their on ice production, which is not what you want from a leader. I don't know. I love the human side of it. I understand it, but I just don't see this asset when teams are already pretty desperate for a cross checker in the playoffs that suddenly get better in the summer when there's no pressure. I don't see it happening. I'll eat my nacho hat if it does, but I don't think Edmondson will get a great return, even if he becomes healthy and somehow miraculously no longer has a back issue.
Yeah, I think it might be surprising. I didn't think that Sherratt would get a great return either, but then he did. And then he got a big contract from supposedly the best GM in the league from Steve Yzerman. So I think those guys just always have value. Do you know what I mean? Like, as long as they can move, and Edmondson is still a decent quality skater.
Yeah, but Sherratt didn't play 45 games in 2 years either. Like, let's keep in mind.
That's true.
Edmondson played 20 games last year. Like, this year he's gonna maybe get to 60 in 2 years. That's less than 50% of his last 2 years. All I'm saying is that back issues don't get better as you get to that age. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I know. Trizak says we'll get Edmondson on DDP yoga. That's like the big thing, and I've seen that for years now. All right, let's talk about this show a little bit, because we don't need to make excuses for Kent Hughes. I just wanted to put some context on the trade deadline that I don't know if you already did, but I just wanted to say my piece.
But I'll add this, is that he was really handcuffed by injuries, let's be perfectly honest, because that removed all the possibilities during the season. And I will say that fans were perfectly fine to be disappointed, but at the same time, there are very good reasons why they weren't active. The Canadiens will be busy in the summer. This was never meant to be their big activity day.
Yeah, and the other thing is, last year, yes, Kent Hughes absolutely crushed the trade deadline. Yeah. He does not have assets on the team this year that are anywhere close to Lehkonen, Toffoli, and Sherratt. Like, not even close. So it was never going to be the haul that they got last year. And even though they didn't make a major trade this year, they still own the best draft pick to change hands in this upcoming draft from the Sherratt trade.
Absolutely. And the last thing I will say is that if Edmondson could have probably played for 2 or 3 games, then I think it was just too risky for some teams. But if he would have actually shown, that he can play for an extended period without going to the bench, he probably would have been traded. Let's be honest. They just ran out of time.
They did. And that happens. It was bad luck, but
Hughes can't do anything about that.
Yeah. All right. I want to remind everyone, because we're getting more people in here, to like the stream for us, because it helps us grow. And if you want to be real cool, you can grab that link and share it on your favorite social media right now and get some more people in here, because why not have some more fun? But I wanted to talk about something again. Sorry, I'm delaying talking about the game, but Mark and I have tossed this idea around. I just want to put it out there for people who are maybe a little bit excited and might want to partake. Mark and I have tossed around the idea in maybe April of doing a show live from a pub here in Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody wants to do that, let us know, because what we'll probably do is there'll be like a ticket situation where you have to pay, but your payment will be like it'll cover like a drink, right? Because the different, like if you do free tickets, you have a lot of people who will get tickets and then no show, and we want to make sure that if people get tickets, they show up. So it'll probably be like $5 to $6 or something like that, and it'll be like your first beer or something like that. And it also helps, push money into the pub that we negotiate a deal with.
Yeah,
so
exactly, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun. Like we've done this before. We did it Montreal at the end of I wasn't part of the Steve Dangle podcast network at the time, but we had a ton of fun in Montreal with all the listeners. So it to me, that's the best, because you can actually meet the people, and that's what I love the most. So if anyone's interested in that, let us know, because we might work out some. There's the 2 games at the end of the season. One of them, Sean Farrell will be playing, so that might be a nice time to kind of finish the season and watch the future. Join the Montreal Canadiens.
100%. All right, let's talk about this game. The first 40 minutes, outmatched, outworked. I wrote down on my notepad here, without Gouli and Barron, their defense is not quick enough, right?
Well, Matheson's quite good, but he can't do it all.
He's the only guy. Harris is too, but like it just seems like they couldn't get the puck moving up the ice outside of Matheson or Harris carrying it out of the zone. No. And it's just like you're getting too thin, right? We know how many injuries they have. They just keep on competing no matter what, but they have so many injuries. But then they came out, Matheson set the pace. Belzil, oh my God. He's made a fool out of Quick.
You my boy, Belzil.
Yeah.
No, he really is, though. I love him. Like Andrew, it's not just me being a fan of him. Listen, he's doing everything you could ask for from a fourth liner. He's producing more than second liners. Like, he's actually producing a good amount on the fourth line with questionable usage, hard work, smart player. To me, he's the easiest contract on this team. You give him another year or two. If not, he becomes the Laval Rocket captain. But I think he has a place on this fourth line for now.
I agree. I don't think there's any rush to move him off the lineup. I would say next year, somebody's going to have to outwork him and outsmart him in training camp.
Which is going to be difficult.
It is.
So
if he brings this same attitude and this same work ethic to next year, Belzil's going to be on the fourth line.
I'll say this: if a prospect that we're all perhaps more excited about that wasn't 31 would be doing what he's doing, like he's basically doing the Raphaël Harvey-Pinard light on the fourth line. And if it was a 20-year-old doing it, we'd be losing our minds. Now, obviously, there's more value with a younger player, but it's not just a good story for Belzil. He's been a good player, full stop, leads the team in relative goals for percentage. I mean, expected goals for. Like, the underlying numbers support it. And also, he's from Saint-Éloi, so 286 people, close to Rivière-du-Loup, which is where my grandfather's from. So you had to know that important information.
Absolutely. And then obviously Suzuki makes the clever dump to beat all the forecheckers to find Yulin in behind the net, and Yulin makes a great pass to Harvey-Pinard, who makes no mistake. And I thought they were going to come back, and I was like, come on, you can't ruin the tank every night.
It felt
like have a bunch of angry people,
right? I'll say this for Yulinen is I would argue that after his first few games, he really, really had a downtick in overall performance. And it's not just that, and just engagement. Like, you want to see him. He was getting outworked by guys like Harvey-Pinard and Belzil. But I think in the last 2-3 games, incidentally, right about where I started saying, hey, he's kind of flunking his audition, he's been much better and much more engaged. It's not just the assist today, it's just the overall. Yesterday, there were a couple plays or not yesterday. Time lost all meaning, but one of those games, there were a couple plays where he's questionable, but overall, I'd say after that, big dip, he's coming back out, and he's kind of, he has to take advantage of this audition. So it'll be fun to see how he does for the next 19 games.
Yeah, it is. And, getting the chance here to play again with Harvey-Pinard, a guy he's familiar with, I think that makes a difference as well, right? It's not just about the confidence of finally getting the goals going for him. It's finding somebody that he can work with. Like, I don't want to dog him, but who has been better when they're playing with Christian Dvorak? You know what I mean? Like, he's not making anybody better on this team and hasn't for 2 years.
Lawson
So
Krause probably was the last guy that I
yeah,
think I don't know. Hey, Vincent, or my good buddy Tardif, I just call him Tardif, old school style, as if we're at Scouts, is asking about Frédéric Allard. I'd have to check the numbers again,
he
but
had a
at
good
one point,
game, just
yeah,
didn't play much.
exactly. But good breakout passes. Like this guy actually has bottom pairing potential, which you really have to read into what I just said there. But he was leading the team in shot share at one point while the Habs were getting just outclassed significantly. So like um like Andrew mentions, he was sheltered, but he did well. So it was a good first game for Frédéric Allard.
100%. He played about 11 minutes, and he did end up leading the Canadians in shot share. So
Hey,
good game from him. Josh Anderson actually led the team in relative expected goals for percentage. That he's just continued to play fantastic hockey the last little stretch here.
I'm happy to see
So
him do it beyond the deadline too. Like, and I guess that's just a bit of a cynical view, but you want to see that till the end of the year. Listen, I know what he brings to the table, but Josh Anderson also has his tendency to ghost the Habs for months at a time. So he's been really good since January 1st. I think his consistency has been the best since he joined the Habs. Keep it up. You want to see that right down to the last game. And with all these guys out of the roster, it's good to see Josh Anderson show a little bit of bite, a little bit of fight back. And I think he's leading the way in that regard. It was Jake Evans doing it at one point, and now it's Josh Anderson. It's maybe there's nothing to play for, but pride is always on the line.
yeah, 100%. And the fact that he's doing it now away from Nick Suzuki, I think, is also something that matters,
Yeah.
because Suzuki has been a guy who, makes his line mates better for as long as we've watched him in the NHL.
Mhm.
And seeing him carry the bag when your center is Jonathan Drouin instead of Nick Suzuki, it's a big drop. No offense to Drouin, but just
Hey,
as a center,
don't make me start on my Drouin is
I
leading
know
the
I'm not
Habs in
trying to
points per
dog him
60 since
again.
January 1st. No, I hear you. And what I'll say for Anderson, and I wrote an article on Montreal Hockey Now about this. It's it's great when he's with Raphaël Harvey-Pinard and Suzuki, his numbers skyrocket, but he's actually changed his style a little bit. He's no longer the road runner. Like he's no longer like, I can't turn left, or I can't turn right. He actually cycles a little bit more now. He's using the ice. He's creating passing lanes. It's no longer just north south, and that's very important for him.
He had one of the games recently. He had like a little spinorama in front of the net where he was trying to set up his teammate. So
Yeah,
good stuff from him.
against LA. Yeah.
Kay says maybe benefit from working with Adam Nicholas. It could be for sure. As much
I
as
don't
you
know how
don't
much the
necessarily
NHL players
develop,
do, but yeah,
I mean, as much as you don't necessarily develop too much past the age of like 24
there
or
are
so in the
habits that you
NHL,
can break. Yeah.
yeah, you can build new habits or break bad habits and add new things to your game. That's how some of the players who are older in this league stick in this league. Look at Erik Karlsson. He is not the player that he was with the Ottawa Senators.
Smart guy though.
He still can't pivot on one of his ankles, right? But he's found a way around that by being extremely smart. And
I'll give you one. Andrei Markov. Remember that? How he
Yep.
reinvented his game? Like
Yep.
he couldn't skate, but he could still, that's why I was calling him Vision. He could hit a guy miles away. He couldn't move. He literally like his knees were about 12 years old each because they both got replaced. But yeah, smart players find a way to reinvent their game. And I wouldn't say that's Anderson's strong point. So seeing him change his style of play, very encouraging, very encouraging.
Yeah, 100%. And one last thing that I wanted to talk about tonight is something that I noticed with Nick Suzuki, who didn't have a great night tonight, I thought. He had some good moments, but 3 or 4 times a game, Nick Suzuki goes in on the forecheck mark. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but it looks like he's not going to get to the puck in time. Like he's either going too slow or he's angled out by the opposing defender.
Yeah.
And then he gets the damn puck. And I don't know how he does it.
He's smart. He's
the smartest. Extraordinarily smart.
Yes, not time lost all meaning, but last game he intercepted a drop pass where
Such a good play.
Like maudit intelligent. Like he anticipated it so well, and he just had to lay back and kind of let the guy make the mistake. But yeah, Nick Suzuki's greatest asset is his intelligence, and it's on display. Even during that drought, he was making 5, 6, 7 plays a night where you're like, wow, that is absolutely brilliant. So yeah, even I think that describes Nick Suzuki quite well. Even in one of his down nights, he impressed us like 3 or 4 times where we're like, God damn, that is some good hockey.
He could have all zeros on the stat line and have the 5 best plays of the game.
Yeah.
Right. And, I was talking to, because I was thinking about like kind of messaging Megan Chayka or something from Stathletes and being like, can you quantify some of the things that Nick Suzuki is good at for me, because like so much of that stuff is
Neutral
you can
zone
see it
and-
if you're paying attention specifically to Suzuki and watching
Doesn't
him
show up
not
on the
the
score
puck.
sheet though.
Yeah, so it's very hard to do. And I was talking to Jesse Marshall from The Athletic, who he covers the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he was saying like Suzuki's a top 3 player in the league for him in terms of entertainment for watching. I was like, that's a big compliment. He was like, yeah, I don't know if anybody in the league is as smart of a player as Nick Suzuki. And yeah, he was talking about how he could make like a Suzuki highlight reel
Yeah.
of just like
goals.
smart plays.
Yes.
And he's like, I think it would be like 20 minutes. And I was like, please do that. And he was like, I'm going to do that. I was like, all right, let's get this going.
I love that. But also one thing I will say, which I feel like knock on wood here. Have you noticed that every single if the Habs were an army right now, it would be Nick Suzuki like Jon Snowing it, like Game of Thrones style, just alone waiting for the cavalry to come. Man, this guy's health is through the roof, So in a season where the Canadiens lose 7 players per game, Nick Suzuki has remained a rock, and it's pretty encouraging to see, because he's not the biggest guy and he goes into dirty areas, but never seems to have any kind of. We saw him this year. There were some issues, but those are issues we play through. Overall, Nick Suzuki is as sturdy as they come.
Yeah, 100%. And when he does get hit, he pops right back up. It's rare for him to get hit, but yeah. All right, I don't want to keep everyone too long tonight, Mark, because The Last of Us is starting now on HBO/Crave in Canada, so I need to get to that.
Look at Mr. Premium Subscription Moneybags over there with his.
I share it with a friend's account.
Yeah,
pay that.
Yeah, that's how Disney is for me. Disney Plus. I share it with my godson. So, and like it goes from Star Wars or anything pretty rough to like Pat Patrouille in French. There, Pat Patrouille, which is they're good shows. I'll admit it. And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are coming back, so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, we're all about Bluey in this family, and the kids really are enjoying a show on Netflix called Hilda, which is really strong. Actually, Bella Ramsey, who's in The Last of Us, is the main character in Hilda.
Hilda? I never heard of it.
And it's really good. I believe it comes out of the UK, but it's like about a girl living in a place called Trollsburg, and there's trolls and like all sorts of magical creatures. The whole thing is basically like you're afraid of things you don't understand, and once you understand them, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's like really good messages for kids, so it's really cool, and really cool animation as well.
Of really good messages, Kay, our de facto producer here, just reminded us to like and subscribe, show and subscribe to this stream, because I'm terrible at doing this. One last thing about kids shows. When I was my good friend had a child pretty young, so like when he was 17 he had a kid, so we were watching in high school, and it was the best show was Blue's Clues, because they had Ray Charles and stuff playing as the musical guests. So I don't know if the shows stand up now, but Blue's Clues, now that was the truth.
Yeah, 100%. All right, we're gonna sign off the show here in a second, but Jeff Boisvert asked me to say a few words in French. Be careful what you wish for, because it's not gonna sound good. You just can say like,
Je m'appelle Andrew Berkshire, right?
Well, here's what I'll do. I'll say goodbye in French, and then Mark will take it home and say a proper goodbye en français. So, bonsoir, or I guess bonsoiré, because we're heading out. But merci beaucoup. We'll see you on Tuesday is the next one? Yeah, Tuesday. All right, Mark, take us out in real French.
Grandement apprécié tout le monde. On vous apprécie tellement. Merci d'avoir venu sur notre stream. Faites certain de revenir. C'est mardi le prochain match. Mais même si vous ne revenez pas, on vous adore. C'est la seule raison qu'on fait ça. Merci beaucoup et à la prochaine fois.
Merci.
Game over! Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada Sports